There is a particular kind of horror in a camera that keeps running after the person holding it is gone. We carry our phones and our action cameras to the edge of the wild because we want proof that we were there, that we stood close to something vast and ancient, and lived to show the picture to everyone back home. Most of the time, the picture is all we bring back. But the same instinct that pushes someone to lean a little nearer for a better frame is the instinct that closes the last few feet of distance between a human being and an animal that was never tame. Sometimes the recording survives when the person does not. The footage becomes the final document of a life, a few seconds or a few minutes that investigators study, that families cannot bring themselves to watch, and that the rest of us are left to imagine. Here are 5 times people recorded their last footage before being eaten by animals. It was August 11th, 2018, on the shore of Lake Naivasha in Kenya, roughly 90 kilometers northwest of Nairobi. Changming Chuang was 65 years old, a tourist from Taiwan, and he had come to one of East Africa's most beautiful freshwater lakes to do what countless visitors before him had done, to stand at the water's edge and photograph its wildlife. Lake Naivasha is a place of postcard scenery, ringed by acacia and papyrus, alive with fish eagles and pelicans, and famous above all for the hippopotamuses that wallow in its shallows. For a photographer, a hippo is an irresistible subject. It is enormous, prehistoric in its bulk, and from a distance it looks almost comically docile, half submerged with only its eyes and ears breaking the surface. That appearance is one of the most dangerous illusions in the natural world. Chang was not alone. With him was a companion, Wu Pengte, 62, another visitor sharing the trip, and the 2 men made their way down toward the lake to get closer to the animals they had come so far to see. According to witnesses, they got too close. A hippo on the shoreline registered the approach of the 2 men as a threat, and in an instant the placid creature in the water became something else entirely. The hippopotamus is built for exactly this. It can weigh more than a small car and can move across short distances faster than a person can run, and its jaws are capable of crushing force. When it charged, there was no margin for the men to escape. The 2 men had likely registered nothing more alarming than a large, slow animal resting near the bank, the kind of sight that invites a person to step forward rather than back. Witnesses described the speed of the change, the way the hippo went from stillness to a full charge across the short stretch of open ground between the water and the men. There was no time to think, no time to drop the camera and run. The animal reached Chang and bit him. The wound was catastrophic, and he began to bleed profusely on the shore where moments before he had been framing a photograph. Wu, the companion, was struck as well, but came away with only minor bruises, close enough to share the terror, but spared the worst of it. Chang was rushed to Naivasha District Hospital, but the injuries were beyond saving. He was pronounced dead there. The man, who had traveled from Taiwan to capture the beauty of a Kenyan lake, had been killed by the very creature he had been trying to immortalize. The detail that lingers is the camera. Chang was in the act of photographing the hippopotamus at the moment it killed him. The images on his memory card were quite literally his last shots, the final frames of an animal that filled more and more of the viewfinder as he or the hippo closed the distance, the record of a man doing something joyful in the seconds before it turned fatal. Taiwan's foreign ministry later confirmed the identities of the 2 men. Kenya Wildlife Service rangers tracked the animal responsible and shot it. What happened at Lake Naivasha was not a freak event, but a recurring tragedy. Hippopotamuses are among the deadliest large animals in Africa, responsible for more human deaths each year than lions or leopards, and a striking number of fatal encounters begin in exactly the way Chang's did, with a visitor trying to get a close photograph of an animal that looked, for a moment, like it would not mind. The lake remains as beautiful as it ever was. It was March 30th, 2024, in Kafue National Park in Zambia, on a game drive that was meant to be the trip of a lifetime. Gail Matson was 79 years old, an American from Minnesota, and she had described the safari to her family as her last big trip, a bucket list journey into one of Southern Africa's great wildernesses. Kafue is enormous. a park larger than some countries, a sprawl of Miambo woodland and floodplain where elephants, lions, and leopards move through country that has changed little in centuries. For a traveler at the end of a long life, drawn to see the giants of the African bush in person, it was the kind of destination that justifies the years of saving and waiting. Matson had made it there. She was in the open safari vehicle, the wind and the dust, and the sounds of the wild all around her, exactly where she had hoped to be. There were 6 tourists in the vehicle along with their guide, the standard arrangement for a game drive. The passengers raised up on tiered seats with open sides for an unobstructed view. According to the tour operator Wilderness, the drive encountered a bull elephant, and the animal was aggressive. A bull elephant is the largest land animal on Earth, capable of weighing 6 tons, and when one decides to charge, there are very few things in the natural world that can stop it. The guide attempted to maneuver the vehicle away, to put distance between the passengers and the animal, but the terrain and the surrounding vegetation closed off the escape route. There was nowhere to go. The moment was captured on video, apparently filmed by another safari goer in a separate vehicle nearby. The footage is difficult to watch precisely because of how ordinary it begins. The great gray shape of the elephant moving across the bush, and then the awful recognition that it is not moving away but toward the people. The elephant runs at the vehicle. The vehicle slows as the animal reaches its left side. Then the elephant rams it and flips it, and on the audio you can hear the gasps of the passengers, the sound of human beings understanding in real time that the thing they came to witness has turned on them. It is a few seconds of recording that compresses an entire catastrophe. In the ordinary run of a safari, the appearance of an elephant is the highlight of the day, the moment the cameras come up and the vehicle slows so everyone can take it in. That is part of what makes the footage so disorienting. For the first seconds it looks like every other sighting, the passengers no doubt reaching for their own phones, and only gradually does the scene reveal that this animal is not pausing to be admired. Open game drive vehicles are designed for visibility, not protection, and that design left the people aboard exposed when the bull closed the gap. Gail Matson was killed. Another woman in the vehicle was seriously injured and had to be evacuated all the way to South Africa for treatment, and 4 other passengers suffered minor injuries. The guide and the rest survived the rolling, splintering violence of a 6-ton animal overturning their transport. Matson's daughter, Rona Wells, identified her mother publicly in the aftermath and spoke of the woman who had set out on the adventure she had always wanted. There is something almost unbearable in the framing of it. A woman of 79 who had called this her last big trip, and for whom the phrase became true in a way no one intended. She had done everything right in the sense that matters to a traveler. She had chosen a reputable operator. She was with a professional guide. She was simply sitting in a vehicle on a game drive, and the wild asserted itself anyway. The video that another tourist captured became the record of her final moments, circulated across the world, a reminder that the open vehicles that carry visitors so thrillingly close to Africa's giants offer almost nothing between a passenger and an elephant that has decided to charge. It was December 7, 2010, on the Lukuga River in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, deep in country where few outsiders had ever set a paddle. Hendry Coetzee was a South African expedition kayaker, one of the most respected and experienced river guides alive, a man who had run some of the most dangerous water on the African continent and written about it with a clarity that drew others to follow him. On this expedition, he was leading 2 Americans, Ben Stooksbury and Chris Corbulich, both accomplished kayakers in their own right, on a first descent, a journey down a stretch of river that no one had ever paddled before. For expedition kayakers, the first descent is the purest expression of the sport, the chance to read water that has no guidebook, no prior account, nothing but the river itself and the skill of the people on it. The Lukuga is not, in most places, a violent river. The danger that day did not come from rapids or waterfalls, it came from what lived in the water. This is country where the Nile crocodile reaches sizes that strain belief, an apex predator that has barely changed in millions of years, capable of explosive ambush from beneath a calm surface. The 3 men were aware of the risk. They were paddling carefully, a few feet apart, with Ketsi in the middle position, on a stretch of water that by all appearances was placid and safe. What happened next took only seconds. A Nile crocodile, later estimated at around 15 feet long, surged up from beneath the surface and seized Coetzee. It happened so fast that the men beside him barely had time to register it. The crocodile capsized his kayak and dragged him under, and in the space of a breath, the most experienced member of the expedition was simply gone. Stooksbury and Corbulis were left on the water a few feet away, unharmed, staring at the place where their leader had been an instant before. There was nothing they could do. A crocodile of that size, with a grip like that, does not surrender what it takes. The two Americans were now alone, deep in remote country, on a river they did not know, having just watched the one person whose judgment they had trusted disappear beneath the surface. Coetzee had been the calm center of the expedition, the man who read the water and decided when it was safe to go on, and the cruelty of it was that he had been taken from the middle position, flanked by the very people who looked to him, in a place he had judged benign. The expedition had been documenting its journey with cameras, as such trips routinely are, and footage from the day survived. The recovered video captures the ambush and its aftermath, though the exact instant of the strike is not clearly visible. The violence, too sudden and too submerged for the lens to fully hold. What it shows is enough. Coetzee vanished into the river. His body was never recovered. Sometime later, villagers found his kayak, empty and unmarked, and returned it. The only physical trace of him the water gave back. Stooksbury and Corbulik survived to carry the story out, and they later recounted the attack to American outlets, including CBS and ABC, describing the speed of it, the helplessness, the impossibility of doing anything in the seconds it took. Coetzee had spent his life on rivers that could have killed him 100 ways, and he had survived all of them through skill and nerve and deep knowledge of the water. In the end, it was not the water that took him, but the thing hidden inside it, on a calm stretch where the danger gave no warning at all, with his companions close enough to touch and powerless to help. It was the morning of November 27, 2025, at Kiley's Beach in Crowdy Bay National Park, on the mid-north coast of New South Wales, Australia. Livia Mulheim was 25 years old, a tourist from Switzerland, and she was in the water with her partner, Lucas Schindler, 26, a dive instructor. It was early, around 6:30 in the morning, the light still soft and the beach nearly empty. The kind of hour that travelers seek out for exactly this reason. A pod of dolphins had come close to shore, and the couple were in the water filming them on a GoPro, capturing the animals at play in the shallows. It is one of the most benign scenes imaginable. Two young people on a beautiful coastline recording dolphins at dawn. Beneath the same water, unseen, was a bull shark estimated at around 3 meters long. The bull shark is one of the few large sharks that thrives in shallow, near-shore water, and it is among the species most often implicated in attacks on humans precisely because it hunts where people swim. There was no warning. The shark struck Mulheim first, and it struck repeatedly, biting again and again with a ferocity that the survivors would struggle to describe. It severed her left arm and savaged her leg. In the space of moments, the calm morning became a fight for her life and water turning red around them. As a dive instructor, Schindler would have spent more time in the ocean than almost anyone on that beach, would have known better than most what was happening in the water around them and exactly how dangerous it was to stay. He stayed anyway. He did not flee. He fought the shark off his partner, and in doing so he was bitten twice on the right leg himself. Then he did something extraordinary. He got hold of Mulheim and dragged her roughly 50 meters through the water to the shore, badly wounded himself, refusing to let the sea keep her. He reached the sand and called emergency services. On the beach, a female bystander improvised a tourniquet from a swimsuit, a piece of fast, clear-headed first aid that very likely saved Schindler's own life by slowing the bleeding from his leg. For Livia Mulheim, it was not enough. The injuries were too severe and too rapid. She died on the sand at Kiley's Beach before paramedics could reach her, in the arms of the man who had pulled her from the water. She had come from Switzerland to see the Australian coast, and she lost her life on it within minutes of filming dolphins at sunrise. The GoPro she had been holding became part of the investigation. Police seized and reviewed the footage she had been shooting in the moments before the attack. described in reports as harrowing, and used it to help reconstruct what had happened and to identify the animal involved. The analysis pointed to a large bull shark. There is a terrible intimacy in that detail, that the last thing the camera recorded was not the shark at all, but the dolphins, the joyful subject she had waded in to film, the footage rolling on right up to the edge of the thing that no one saw coming. It was a recent tragedy, raw and close, a reminder that the most ordinary holiday moment on a calm morning can sit a few feet above something that changes everything. It was October 5, 2003, at Kafue Bay in Katmai National Park, Alaska, at the close of another summer that Timothy Treadwell had spent living among grizzly bears. Treadwell was a self-styled bear conservationist, a man who had devoted 13 consecutive summers to the wild coast of Katmai, camping unprotected among some of the largest brown bears on Earth. He carried no firearm and no electric fence, and largely refused the conventional distances that wildlife professionals keep. Instead, he lived close, astonishingly close, giving the bears names, speaking to them, and filming hundreds of hours of footage from a few feet away. To his admirers, he was a passionate advocate who had built a genuine, intimate record of these animals. To his critics, including many who knew bears well, he was courting a death that was only a matter of time. By that final season, he was not alone. His girlfriend, Amy Huguenard, had joined him at the camp at Kafue Bay. The summer was nearly over, the season of plenty winding down, the bears growing hungrier and more desperate as they fed against the coming winter. It was the most dangerous time to be where they were, among animals for whom the easy food was running out. On October 5th, near the very end of their stay, the thing Treadwell's critics had always feared finally happened. He and Huguenard were attacked and killed by a grizzly at their camp. Their partially eaten remains were later recovered. An older, aggressive bear found at the site was shot. What sets this case apart from every other, what has kept it in the public imagination for more than 2 decades, is the recording. Their video camera was running during the attack, but the lens cap was still on, and so the camera captured no image at all. What it recorded instead was roughly 6 minutes of audio, 6 minutes of sound from inside the worst moments of 2 lives. A trooper who later listened to the tape described what was on it. He could hear Treadwell screaming. He could hear Huguenard yelling at him, first telling him to play dead, the standard advice for a brown bear attack, and then, as that failed, telling him to fight back, to hit the bear. 6 minutes of audio, no picture, the camera faithfully recording a horror it could not see. It is a detail that reads almost like a dark joke at the expense of a man who had built his entire identity around the lens. The cap left on at the one moment a recording would have shown the world what he had always insisted it needed to understand about the bears. Instead, the device captured only sound, a documentary stripped down to the rawest possible form. 2 voices and an animal, and nothing to look at. The audio was never released to the public, and the people closest to the case worked to keep it that way. The filmmaker Werner Herzog, who made the 2003 footage and Treadwell's life into his 2005 documentary Grizzly Man, listened to the tape as part of his work. He chose not to include it in the film. Instead, he filmed his own reaction as he heard it, sitting with headphones on across from the woman who held the recording, and on camera he urged her never to listen to it and to destroy it. That woman, Jewel Palovac, who had been Treadwell's friend and the keeper of his legacy, has said that she later destroyed the tape. The 6 minutes are gone now, existing only in the memories of the few who heard them and in the descriptions they left behind. Timothy Treadwell had spent 13 summers building a vast archive of footage meant to bring people close to the bears he loved. And in the end, the most important recording of his life was the one with the cap over the lens, the one no one was ever meant to hear. He had wanted, more than anything, to close the distance between humans and these animals. The audio that survived him is the sound of that distance finally collapsing, captured by a camera that recorded everything and showed nothing at all. 5 people, on 5 continents' wild edges, across more than 20 years. A photographer at a lake shore, a traveler on a bucket list safari, an expedition leader on a quiet river, a tourist filming dolphins at dawn, a man who chose to live among bears. What links them is the camera. the impulse to record the wild that drew each of them a few feet closer than they should have come, and the recordings that outlasted them. The footage survives in evidence rooms and on memory cards, and in the descriptions of those who could not bring themselves to look away. In every case, the recording was made out of love of an animal, a place, a moment worth keeping, and in every case it ended up documenting the opposite of what its maker intended. It is all that is left of moments that began in wonder and ended in seconds, and it stands as a quiet warning about how thin the line really is between watching the wild and becoming part of it.